In a few short months from this recording, Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 is going to turn 20 years old. And while the dust has long since settled, it's found a way to remain somewhat relevant over the years, despite being one of the most poorly received games ever made. Its legacy has truly long since exceeded the game itself, and there are few games as notorious as Sonic 06. Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic Next Gen, Sonic 06, whatever you want to call it, the game casted such a large shadow over the series and its fanbase that we still feel to this day. Sonic as a series is massive, but a bomb like this did such a number to its reputation that I think we've only recently seen it recover from. It's a rare kind of failure, one with such a bad reception that it still gets brought up by people online time and time again. I'm not gonna lie to you and tell you that this game has secretly been good the entire time and that you just don't get it, but as a fan of the Sonic Adventure games, I'd be lying if I said I didn't find things in this game that I genuinely enjoyed. Sonic 06 was made to be good just like any other game, but for a variety of reasons it didn't work out. And when I think back to the game, considering all of the fan works, the memes, the videos, everything surrounding this, I've certainly derived more fun from this awful project than I did from many other games. And that's something that you can't take away from it. Sonic 06 has been dissected endlessly, but coming back to it brought up a lot of thoughts and feelings toward this horribly misguided project. So today, I wanted to take a look back at Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 as we rapidly approach its 20th anniversary. Before we get into it though, welcome to the channel, and if you like mid-2000s retro gaming stuff, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. The lead up to Sonic 06's release was fun to look back on. I was pretty young back when the 7th generation of consoles was starting up, but things were moving fast into the new HD era and it was time for Sonic to follow suit. I'd basically played every Sonic game I could get my hands on up to that point after I played Sonic Adventure 2, so after picking up and playing Shadow the Hedgehog the year before, I'd gotten wind of an HD Sonic game coming to the Xbox 360. Even though I was mostly a Nintendo and PC kid growing up, hearing that the other consoles were getting this cool new serious Sonic game had me pretty excited. That truly was the time for dark, serious versions of video games. We had serious Zelda, serious Pokemon. Starting with Shadow, we got serious Sonic. Even if you don't remember it, people were asking for that sort of thing, and I was part of that. Eventually, the game did drop at the end of 2006 and immediately became a laughingstock. Even if gaming news was spotty at best, I still heard that it was this awful buggy mess of a game. That, alongside the price of the hardware for the PS3, led to my family sticking with Nintendo and getting a Wii. I remember when Sonic and the Secret Rings came out, and it was this weird sort of console war brag to compare our mediocre Sonic game to the really bad one on other consoles. I think that for the rest of the gaming public though, Sonic 06 was a huge part of why we had that long-running Sonic has had a bad transition to 3D thing, and dozens of other commonly repeated talking points about how bad Sonic has always been. It gave the series the reputation of having a billion colorful characters, cringy stories, and a deeply uncool vibe that fans of the series had to carry for years. There's a reason why, after the game dropped, Sega quickly pivoted the entire series to be more focused on nostalgic throwbacks and that sort of thing. Once the buzz died down a little bit though, for some reason I'd still be curious about it. For years you would see compilations of the various bugs and glitches that actually made Sonic 06 seem like a fun novelty to me. And so sometime later, I think around 2012, I got a used copy for PS3 for next to nothing. But you know what? With the knowledge and information I had gathered by watching all of those YouTube videos and reviews, I actually had a pretty decent time running through the game. I knew what I was getting into, so it made things a lot more manageable, and it was just fun to see what I could get away with. It was far from an unplayable mess. At worst, it was a glitchy, bad version of one of my favorite games of all time, which still made it pretty good in my books. All of that, though, doesn't absolve Sonic 06 of the reality that it's just not finished. The game has random lag spikes all of the time. It's insanely easy to get stuck on walls, and of course it has those infamously long loading screens. In fairness, I did replay the game on PS3, which lags a decent bit more than on 360. In the early years of the PS3, games would consistently perform better on 360 due to a large variety of reasons. So even though Sonic 06 has lag on both consoles, on 360 it lags less, and also the game's visuals do look a little bit cleaner. The PS3 version just struggles in general with a lot more jaggies and shorter draw distance. Lighting is harsher on PS3, and it also causes a lot of color depth in environments to get washed out, especially in lighter areas. But anyway, I'm not Digital Foundry. I just wanted to say that after sitting down and actually comparing the two, the 360 version is absolutely the way to go if you actually do want to play this game. The PS3 version was the one I originally played though, so I actually ended up recording most of my gameplay on that version. Still, they're similar enough that I'm just gonna bounce between footage whenever I need to.
Whoa!
Honestly, it doesn't really matter which version you play, because in Sonic 06, you can't walk 10 feet without stumbling into a glitch, oddity, or just plain confusing design decision. Sonic's movement is slow yet twitchy at the same time, you can't change momentum in the air, and something as simple as the homing attack drops you like a rock after you use it. That's not even to mention how slow many of the other characters are, like Shadow and Silver. Shadow feels like a gutted version of his previous iterations, with an emphasis on combat that actually ends up powering him down in order to perform meaningless button mash combos on enemies. And Silver, while admittedly unique with his focus on physics, moves at a snail's pace and has to resort to stunning enemies with a bunch of laggy attacks. And to make things worse, there are dozens of sections with other characters that somehow handle even worse than the other three hedgehogs. Not to mention, on the PS3 version, Tails and Rouge lag immediately anytime a bomb is present. They're all very tiring to sit through, other than Blaze. She's actually pretty fun to play. Along with the side characters breaking the pace up, stages often drop random unfinished gimmicks on you that take away from the standard gameplay you'd expect, like these flying sections in Shadow's levels where you can literally just hold the boost button and go to the next area. When Sonic 06 first dropped, the quality of the game was a shock, but these days it's pretty well understood that most of these issues were caused by poor management. A few interviews would crop up every once in a while that the game just wasn't ready for its release schedule, and the team knew it. The upcoming holiday season and the then new PS3 forced them to divide up the team to work on porting the game for multiple SKUs while also learning the hardware. At the same time, they'd planned to do a Wii version as well that became Sonic and the Secret Rings, which just added even more work. So we had the perfect storm here of ambitious new technology, a big new game, and multiple SKUs getting in the way of developing one solid product.
You have every right to want justice.
The narrative has been that Sega higher-ups were to blame and better management would have saved the game, but I'm not necessarily convinced that that would have been the case. There are still things here that might not have been improved by a simple delay. I've seen the argument pretty often that Sonic 06's stages are well designed but merely held back by the gameplay. And while I do think that there are a few great stages or parts of stages, I don't know if I can say they're all to the level of Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 or even Heroes. There are also a bunch of weird alternate paths in the game that don't make a lot of sense when you think about it. Like this one path early on in Wave Ocean that takes you on a crazy detour even though it seems to be the intended route. It feels like the path on the right is meant to be a shortcut, but the intended route is so long and drawn out. It's really weird.
How long is this gonna go on?
Game design is one thing, but the art direction in Sonic 06 is also a little questionable. I actually don't mind the longer look for Sonic and the rest of the main cast, but Eggman and the humans look uncanny next to the animal characters. To be fair, the game was positioned as a bit of a reboot, but that doesn't really mean anything in the long run. The motion capture, or whatever they use to do the cutscenes, can also have the strange effect of making Sonic look like a dude in a costume. And coming back to Sonic 06, I was reminded how out of place Elise looked. She's like a weird porcelain doll that just hovers around near these characters, and she's so overly lit on PS3, it's like she's next to a floodlight or something. I actually used to think that some of these cutscenes looked pretty good, but in retrospect, they're full of weird animations that time has not been kind to. And speaking of the cutscenes, you can't forget that the story of the game is also completely all over the place. By 2006, stories in these games had frankly gotten out of control. I love the storytelling in the adventure era, don't get me wrong, but even I can admit that they might have crossed a line here. The joke back in the day was that the intro looked like something out of Final Fantasy, and that's somewhat true, but the plot itself is far more of an issue. The whole overarching narrative involving characters jumping back and forth through different points in time, using plot conveniences to get characters where they need to be is nuts. Sonic and Shadow somehow find a way to easily time travel with 2 Chaos Emeralds and a little elbow grease. But the minute that you introduce something like that, the entire plot stops making sense. Silver is a complete buffoon as well, who believes anything that's told to him, and listens to a story from someone who looks like Mephiles. Mephiles also just giving up and killing Sonic himself in minutes is just icing on the cake. And the way it all wraps up with the most infamous scene in any Sonic game just adds to the madness that is the story here. The terms Iblis Trigger, Flames of Disaster, or Scepter of Darkness feel like they were written to sound cool by some 14-year-old without much actual thought. And Sonic, the namesake of the entire game, is also weirdly unimportant to the overall plotline, where he serves at most as a MacGuffin for Silver to chase.
I better hurry and save Elise. Elise? Wait! Where's Elise? Elise's train is... Elise, are you alright? Let's get to Elise right away. Elise!
If you track each character's motivation in the story, Sonic spends pretty much the entire time chasing Elise around until he's shot in the back. The plot of Sonic 06 is so lovably convoluted that even it chooses to cancel itself out at the end, which is simply hilarious in an unintentionally meta way. And the funniest thing is, that's just scratching the surface on the sheer magnitude of problems that this game has. I didn't even mention the voiceover fumbles, the broken gems, or whatever this is. Love it ironically or hate it passionately, Sonic 06 is just crazy. So I spent a bit of time here going over what Sonic 06 did wrong and how it got to be like that, but like I said, a lot of those problems don't actually stop me from having fun with the game and actually make it more enjoyable. The worst thing a poorly made game or movie can be is boring, and Sonic 06 is far from boring. There are absolutely tedious moments like certain character sections or the long boss battles, but the moment-to-moment gameplay is so jank and easy to break open that it becomes entertaining to just see what happens. I've come to genuinely love some of the really broken aspects of Sonic 06. Maybe you'll fly off into a random direction or get stuck on a random wall for no reason. There's so little that isn't broken that it ends up feeling like you're peeking behind the curtain and seeing things that you were never meant to. Once you've explored the game long enough, you can start using these glitches and exploits to your own advantage too, just to have a good time seeing what you can get away with. Sonic's gems are easily the best example of this. Since they were barely even finished and never given any limitations, you're free to spam them and try to use them to break things in all sorts of wacky ways. The Sky Gem sends you flying in whatever direction you want, and the Purple Gem is basically an infinite moon jump. You can use them to skip anything that you deem unfun and explore empty areas of levels that were never meant for you to be in, just for the heck of it. It does make the other two stories a little bit less exciting, but in Sonic 06, everybody has some jankiness to play around with. Shadow's teleport is so broken that it can send you straight into the floor. Omega's float can be used infinitely to reach random areas, and Silver's levitate can easily be used to clip through walls.
The searchlight pillars are solid. You need to use missile.
With the game being so fun to break apart, it might surprise you that I do also think that there's a good Sonic game at the core of this experience. It's still actually fun to run around as Sonic here, even without the gems. Certain levels like Crisis City, Flame Core, and Kingdom Valley are genuinely fun to replay. Shadow's combat in concept is a novel way to differentiate him from Sonic while keeping him similar in playstyle, and the ideas behind Silver's physics-based combat is pretty unique, especially for the time. So as bad as things were, I still had it in me when I originally played the game to at least get the S ranks for Sonic's levels. The game is built like it's from 1998, but I mean that in a good way. For me, this feels like the closest we ever got to Sonic Adventure 3, with a similar structure to the first game, similar large stakes in the plot, and a third hedgehog introduced after Shadow in Adventure 2. The Sonic Adventure formula runs deep here, and I think that's a big part of why I still find it enjoyable. A lot of things didn't work out the way they were meant to, but Sonic 06 has obvious signs of good concepts spoiled by circumstance. Moments like the Kingdom Valley Mach Speed section are truly inspired, and even if I'm critical of many of the level designs, they at least have some interesting ideas that feel like the best of the adventure formula. I also have to mention that Sonic 06 has some of the best music in the series. Let me play you a few of my favorites. I do also have a soft spot for the tone and vibe of Sonic 06. The more mature direction for Sonic never really bugged me personally. Like I said, I was kind of asking for this. I've come to really appreciate the genuine, serious tone that the adventure era had. Not every character is treating everything entirely seriously, but no matter how absurd the ideas get, nobody is killing the vibe with irony. The cutscenes as they are in the retail game are underbaked, but the key art of each of the characters still looks cool, and the broad strokes concepts of the game could have made for something interesting. There's a little bit of high-tech classiness to Sonic 06 that aligns with the overall vibe so many games in the early PS3 360 days had. Lots of realistic nature contrasting with classy architecture and chrome, put together with some sleek UI. Am I sad that they moved on from this art direction after the fact? Not really, but I did like what they were going for. There's also one other thing that Sonic 06 does that I don't think is done in any other Sonic game, and that's the co-op multiplayer mode. Somehow, despite barely making it to launch day, they thought co-op was a must-have. The tag mode, as it's known in-game, feels like something a random developer decided to put together in a week. But here, you can pick from any of the 3 main characters and play through areas of all but 2 of the game's 9 action stages. They're similar to Sonic's versions of the levels as far as I could tell, but with the addition of a few switches and gates to coax you and your teammate to work together. In practice, it's not that great, but being multiplayer means you can share the train wreck that is Sonic 06 with a friend. Sonic still has access to his gems in this mode and outclasses the others in nearly every way, able to bypass pretty much any obstacle to just leave your tag partner behind. Not only that, but he can also just ruin the entire experience altogether by slowing down time for everything but himself. Shadow, once again, is kind of the worst here as the only character that doesn't have anything that special, but Silver does have some fun things to play around with himself. He can grab the other player like he could in his boss battle, and then use it to indefinitely throw someone as far as they want into the skybox, which you can use to complete levels in seconds. And you don't even have to throw them actually, you could just hold them there forever. My favorite little detail about the tag mode though has to be the fact that the levels just simply repeat on a loop until you decide to quit. Playing Sonic 06 this far into the future, it's hard not to look back and see the missed potential that the project had. Sonic Team was swinging for the fences here and missed in basically every way possible, but they were obviously trying to make something huge. It was never meant to end up the way that it did, but I think that the growing change in sentiment toward the game is a sign that people can recognize the game's ambition. Time has proven that revisionist history happens with basically every game franchise. The Legend of Zelda and Pokemon games come to mind here, where every game eventually gets some time in the spotlight when it's reevaluated by fans that grew up with it. But it goes to show that as long as a series stays relevant enough, there will always be new people that see the good in whatever title they spent their formative years with. I've seen it myself with the Sonic Adventure games, and the same can be said with Sonic 06. And when you have a community as large and dedicated as Sonic has, a bad thing can turn into a blessing. In a funny way, these days, Sonic 06 feels like maybe an embarrassing moment you had in your past that you can look back on and have a laugh about. After the initial wave of mainstream mockery came and went, it became a sort of in-joke for fans. Videos from channels like Snapcube or Jet I think were huge in the reevaluation of Sonic 06, to the point that I can't watch a lot of these cutscenes without thinking about them. When enough people make memes or jokes about something, I think it makes it easier to appreciate its good qualities. There have been so many fan works that have kept the game somewhat relevant over the years. It was surprising when Sonic Generations brought Crisis City back, but by the time Shadow Generations came out a decade later, it was a foregone conclusion that Kingdom Valley would show up. Beside that, we've seen several developers try to recreate Sonic 06 in their own fan games in an effort to make the game into what they believed it could have been. And there's most recently been an effort to recompile the 360 version to run natively on PC. But I don't think anything has had as positive of an impact on the game's reputation as Project 06. If you're somehow watching this and haven't heard of it, P06 or Project 06 is a fan game that completely recreated all of the main stages from Sonic 06. The quality of improvements it makes to the original game while keeping the vast majority of its core design intact is honestly fascinating to see in action. It's better than it ever could have been and has a bunch of modern features that take it above and beyond just making the game playable. There are so many smart changes that really validate the original playable characters. Sonic needed the least improvements, but he feels smoother than ever to control. It makes some sections like Crisis City feel incredibly satisfying to blast through. Silver, meanwhile, has a much more mobile toolset, fixing a lot of the plotting pace of the original and clearing up some of his glaring weaknesses. And Shadow is so improved, he feels like he's from a completely different game. Being able to actually use his teleport in combat is amazing, and he looks so great in action. Using Chaos Spear to extend combos in a large area is a deeply satisfying aspect of his moveset, and it turned the worst of the three hedgehogs into my favorite one to play as. Throw in a bunch of beautifully done stage introductions and optional unlockables, and it becomes such a treat for fans of the original game. It's kinda crazy looking back at all of it. The people that latched onto this absolute mess of a game and decided that they wanted to take it and ran with it. Whether you just enjoyed Sonic 06 for what it was, watched funny videos about it, or played the various attempts to fix it, we all took part in taking this buggy, unfinished game about a blue hedgehog that kisses a human and kept it relevant for years. And as a fan of this series, I think that's probably the coolest thing about it. Sonic 06 was an ambitious entry into a series that failed to meet expectations in every conceivable way. But over the years, it's kind of unbelievable how many people have decided to try to vindicate this game in so many ways. Just this last week, I saw another animated video based on Sonic 06. I think people love to see a passionate failure much more than they like seeing a boring success. Things that work perfectly every time aren't very novel, but things that struggle and take big swings, even if they miss, can be deeply interesting. That's what I think Sonic 06's legacy boils down to. As time has gone on, more and more people have learned to respect the ideas that this game had, saying that it was merely a victim of circumstance, as it was trying to do something great. We could never know what could have been if this game was delayed or improved in whatever way, but I can't understate how cool it is that people have picked up the bones of Sonic 06 and made it into their own thing. At the end of the day, it's just another step in this long-running series, and it's one that I think needed to happen. I remember going to the Sonic Symphony a few years ago, and when His World, the main theme of the game, came on, the entire crowd was singing along to the main theme of the worst game in this entire franchise, and people were just enjoying it for what it was. And if that isn't the most fascinating thing to see out of a fandom, I don't know what is. This game blows, but it's hard not to like it. I hope you enjoyed hanging out here watching the video. If you did, it would be really great if you subscribed to the channel, hyped the video and liked it, and left a comment letting me know what your thoughts are on good old Sonic 06. If you like Sonic games, I also have a few videos on a few other things. If you want to check those out, they'll be in a pinned comment. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care.